Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's webinar from Annika Digital. It's myself, Anne Stanley, and I'm with Darren Wynn. You've come in as Anne Stanley this morning. You do realise that, Darren?
Hi. Oh, wow, two Anns.
That's okay.
How did I do that? I'll tell you how that's happened, but maybe later.
Well, I've actually got an AI twin now, and so have you, haven't we? So we've both got I call it AI Annie and Data Darren, but Darren doesn't want to be called Data Darren. So okay, I digress. So hopefully you can all hear us okay. We have got handouts top right. You can go and help yourself. You'll be able to download those. We've got some polls to do first of all. There's a lot to cover this morning, and we will be sharing the video later on. So let's just dive straight in with the polls, and then I can then share my screen. Okay, so let's start the first one. Hopefully you'll be able to see it on the screen. So which of the following generative AI tools do you use? The free ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, etc. Paid accounts of ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity. Image, video-based tools like Midjourney, HeyGen. Custom GPTs, Claude projects, Google Gems, Notebook. I meant to write also, I got distracted just as we did it. If you also use anything like DeepSeek, Grok, etc., if you want to either put those in the free or the paid, depending on what you do. Obviously, you can have more than one option. You can actually have a paid account and a free account. And let's just see how the numbers are stacking up. So about 50, I should have had nothing, but I think that comes in the next one. 50% of you are using a free account. I would definitely recommend paying the extra $20 to upgrade. We actually use Claude and ChatGPT, and I've got paid accounts for that. But because we've got Gemini, as in Google Workspace, we've got paid accounts for that. So we've already got 3 paid accounts just in those. So you've got about 50% have got a free account, 22% have got a paid account, 10% are using image-based tools like Midjourney, HeyGen, which is how you do your digital twin. And then 20% are using custom GPTs, which is called Claude Projects, Google Gems, or Notebook. You can use the ones that are already created, even if you've got a free custom GPT or free ChatGPT account, but you can't make your own unless you've got a paid account. So I definitely recommend that as one of the advantages of having a paid account. So hopefully you'll find that useful. So the next poll is, how much do you use these tools? You've got to remember that you're talking to 2 AI addicts here. I think they're going to be, instead of Alcoholics Anonymous, is going to be an AI Anonymous group soon. How much do you use these tools? 10 plus per day. Can't live without them and use them for everything. I think that's me and Darren, definitely. Once a day if I'm doing a specific project. Occasionally once a week at the most, rarely. Never tried them. Okay. So about half of we've got a few addicts in the room, Darren. 46% are saying they can't live without them and use them for everything. I must admit I don't use Google as much anymore. Once a day, or if I'm doing a specific project. So that's really interesting. That's 80% of the people here are using them at least once a day, maybe even more than that. So really engaged audience. 70, the rest of you, maybe once a week. What I would suggest you do is have a look at my webinar on advanced prompting. You'll probably find the reason you're not doing it as much is because you're either not doing lots of computer work, or you haven't learned how to prompt yet properly. Maybe Darren, you could share that webinar, that blog in the there's a webinar and a blog. Maybe you could share that in the chat so people could find that useful.
Yep.
And then the final question, this is the more advanced stuff. So have you used any automation or experimented with AI agents? So no. You could have used workflows in things like HubSpot, Go High Level, Salesforce, or other CRM marketing, sorry for the typo, marketing automation software. That's when things like, you get an email, and then everybody that answers the email, you send one reply back, and then if they didn't answer, you send them a different email. So that's what we would call a workflow, and that's the basics of a lot of the stuff that we're doing. It's all these flow diagrams, but 50% so far haven't tried any of this stuff. Use Zapier for automating marketing. Use some AI-driven tools. Yeah, I didn't list all the AI-driven tools, but you've got things like Jasper, Copy, Otter for doing transcriptions and video listening to calls and things. Played with tools like Make, Relevance, or NAN, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Really into building lots of agents with multiple tools. I'm assuming that James is online and he's answered that. So only 4% of you are actually really into it and playing with it, which is great because it means you're going to learn absolutely loads today. So I'll close the poll, and then I'm going to share my slides. I'll share my slides all the way through, Darren, and then if you can just...
Perfect. Yeah, that's going to be best. You
can then tell me when you want me to move on. Let me just get to the beginning of the slides. And then if you can tell me whether you can see or not. I think it's probably worth you keeping your mic on to start with, because you're going to be coming in quite quickly. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, got that.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is what we're going to be talking about today. So how to use AI to improve your productivity, profit, and customer satisfaction. So first of all, a great photograph of me and Darren and Sean. Sean's baby is being born today. So I haven't had any news yet. So Sean, I don't think so. I would be very surprised if he's on the call this morning. He's either had no sleep. But a little bit about, this was us at an event a couple of weeks ago. A little bit about me. I'm the founder and CTO. This was our 18th birthday party at Vino's. If any of you are really interested, we're going to do a similar talk next week at Vino's on the Thursday afternoon. We run regular e-commerce lunches, but you are welcome to attend that one. 18 years running Annika, 23 years in digital marketing, which is quite a scary number. I mainly do consulting and training and specialize in anything really technical. I've written a few books, and of course we do the webinar every Friday, and you can contact me. If you aren't already connected to me on LinkedIn, please do. And I'm on annika.co.uk.
Cool. My name's Darren Witt. I'm MD at Annika Digital. So I've got 15 years experience in digital marketing, all of them at Annika, as it happens. Involved in lots of different things. So operations, leadership, HR, finance. So I got involved with AI pretty recently, actually, probably about 2 years ago. Previous to that, I wasn't really involved with a lot of automation, but as I started to get more into AI, I started to see the value of automation plus AI and started to build my knowledge up that way. And at the same time, tools like NAN and Make, which we'll show a couple of examples today of those tools and some of the builds that we've done around that. I started to automate more and more. Started with simple things. I've got some examples of custom GPTs. I can see a lot of us today are using custom GPTs for a range of different things. And then going into how to use OpenAI and its API model alongside those automations to start to automate lots of different areas. So I would say, I put a figure on it when I was at a conference in Liverpool, at about 40%, I reckon, of my job now I actually automate through various different tools that I've built. So hopefully I'll share a couple of those today and inspire some ideas on automations you can build.
Brilliant. So let's just start with the fundamentals. Okay. So first of all, I wanted to go through where you and your staff are on the AI adoption ladder. I probably should have done the poll just before this, but are you a basic user just using ChatGPT? Have you started to become more advanced, creating complex prompts? Possibly you could have included custom GPTs in that. Are you a creator, which is where you actually use tools specifically for your role? So, for example, if you're a designer, you might be using Midjourney all the time, or you might be using Figma or Adobe with all their AI tools. Are you a builder? Are you building tools which you then use? So I would class myself and Darren as builders. We don't use code, but we can use things like make and I've been using relevance. I'm going to be using N8N this weekend because I'm doing this 6 months training course where we're pretty much learning absolutely everything about AI. But I'm not a coder, which is really when you become an engineer, when you need to know a little bit about Python and a lot about JSON, which is JavaScript. And I would say James, who hopefully is in the audience, I would put him at that level because he's able to do some of these API integrations where he connects one system to another. Where sometimes me and Darren get a little bit lost. But we're learning very fast. And what you need to understand really is some of the terminology and actually how generative AI works. So we have got a very extensive 10-day course and we've got lots of webinars and stuff. We're launching the course later on in the year, but we'll cover this in a lot more detail. But I wanted to just introduce some of the terminology because people banter this around and nobody has a clue what they're talking about. So in the case of ChatGPT, when it first started out, you would be able to put a text prompt in and you would later on you could upload a document and then later on you could link it to the internet. And behind there is something called a large language model or a LLM, which is where that text gets processed. We call that encoding and embedding and tokenization. And then the prompt that you provide is interpreted and it looks into its data and its training data. And at the beginning of ChatGPT, which was November 22, the data was already 2 years out of date, but it would find its data and it would bring back the most relevant and most likely answer. And it generated that text. So that's why it's called generative AI. It doesn't copy it, but it's a sort of like an average of all the text and all the information that were relate to your original your original text. And then it generates a text output. So that's what we call a sort of a generative text AI. And then we get the image prompts, and they're slightly different. They use something called a diffusion model. And you can sometimes see this. If you've used ChatGPT recently, you sort of see it starts off with this sort of grey area and it gradually, it's called denoising it, and it gradually reduces it. And then you get left with something that relates to your prompt. And you can actually do that with both the text and with images. And this is things like DALL-E, Midjourney, and many, many others. Stable Diffusion is another one that's actually been built in the UK. And then the output is an image. Now, if a system like the ChatGPT we've got now does both, then it's called a multimodal, or in ChatGPT, an omnimodal version, because it will do images, text, code, analysis of information. So a lot of these models now are much more general, but also you get some that are really specialist. So you've got something like Kling AI, which I'll show you in a minute, which is just around image and video, starting with something that you supply at the beginning. And then you've got other tools which are like Julius.ai, which is just focused on analytics. So these tend to be trained, and that's where something called the knowledge base comes in. And we often call that the RAG or LoRa's, and they mean slightly different things. And I know somebody will type what they are in the chat for me. And these are often vector databases, which is where a load of information is supplied and you train it on your company information. So a good example would be a custom GPT, which is relatively simple, but you provide examples of the documents or I've got one for social posting. So I've got lots of examples of exactly what I want it to look like. And a lot of the stuff that Darren will show will come into that category. So what you're doing, you're using the brain, but this is like the library or the archive of knowledge, which will supplement the brain and make them work better. And that's why generative AI is so powerful, particularly when it can go on live and access the internet at any one time. So I'm just going to go through the different stages and the evolution of this. So first of all, I talked about things like HubSpot or Go High Level, which is the automation that you can do in email marketing and in the back of marketing automation software. But that generally, until recently, didn't have any AI at all. So, and that I've been doing that for 10 years. So that sort of automation with triggers and rules, that's been around forever. And then you've got the generative AI, which is the basic prompts, which a lot of you guys are using. And as you become more experienced and you learn advanced prompting techniques like CoStar and Markdown, which in the article that the blog article, then you'll find that you'll get much better responses because it's, rubbish in, rubbish out. So if you can provide very clear instructions with exactly what you want, you're going to get a much better answer. And that's where the custom GPTs come in. And that's what Darren's going to be talking a lot about, where you actually supplement that with examples and information and resources to make that answer much better. Then you move on to a whole load of apps and SaaS tools, which is pay for use. So this is things like Kling AI, and you've also got Otter and Copy, all those. They've all got a very specific use. And what they've done is they've trained using the OpenAI tools, usually going directly into OpenAI, not going through ChatGPT. Or even using something called an open source version of these tools. The sorts of names that you will become familiar with, but I won't bore you now. Somebody will write them in the chat. Is things like Hugging Face and GitHub, where you've got all of this, these sources of LLMs and models and RAGs and things, where you can actually download them onto your local machine and use them and train them and get them to do what you want. And in most cases, they're free to use, but you do have to watch the license. So that's really interesting. There's lots of things there, but you've also got the pay for use ones, which tend to be between about $20 and $100 a month, depending on how much use you get of them. And then you've got the AI agents. These are the triggered or autonomous, which means they run on their own. And these are the ones that go along and do the much more complicated things. And we're going to talk about those in a lot of detail coming up in a second. So I just want to show you a little bit about automation. So if you can scan this code now, what should happen if it's working properly is that you're going to get a form. Now, you're probably going to come back to the same form later on because you're going to get a load of offers later and you're going to want to take part. But if you can scan the form and fill in the form, if it's working properly and I've got the right code, you should get a WhatsApp message to your phone. And Darren, if you can tell me if it's working. Unfortunately, I've used it so many times, I'm not getting a WhatsApp anymore. And I just want to check if it's working. And you'll see what's actually happening behind the scenes. And this is an example of automation without the code. Without AI. So what's happening in the chat, Darren? Is anybody, are people doing it yet? I know it takes a little time to come up. There's quite a few filled. You don't have to fill in all of them.
Having a go now. I have scanned it and it does work. It takes us to the form, but I have also filled the form out a couple of times now, so I won't go through that again.
Yeah, and maybe you won't necessarily get the WhatsApp message as well. So we'll see. So most of you should find the form. And what I'm going to do is, I know you're going to multitask, but I'm going to explain what's happening in the background. And hopefully some of you will get a WhatsApp message. And if you get a WhatsApp message, if you can reply to it or you can write in the chat, that would be amazing. I will start getting them pinging up.
We've got a couple of works, so I think that's
brilliant. Okay, well, I'll start getting a load of, if you then respond on WhatsApp, I will get a load and you'll start hearing my phone ping as people start sending me messages. So please do fill in the message and you can go and get the resources there as well. So basically what's happened is behind the scenes in Go High Level, we've created a workflow. We've triggered the workflow by you filling in this form. And that is why hopefully you've received the WhatsApp message. What happens next is in the back of our Go High Level database, a tag is added. And we will know that you've filled in that inquiry form using this particular form. And there's a specific tag for that. Then what happens is we've sent you an email. So if you go and look in your email, you should be able to see an email now saying, thank you for filling in the form. Here's a link to the resources. This is automation in action. And then also you should have been sent a WhatsApp message, which will look something like that, where it will say, thank you for filling out our form or attending our event, whatever the message is. The next steps are below. Access freebies. I have a question. Book a sales call. And then depending on what you answer, the next thing happens. And then you can start talking to us on WhatsApp. But of course, we're all going to be busy doing this. So if it didn't work, don't worry. If you let me know if you get the WhatsApp, that's great. But if not, you've seen the first part of it and you should see the email if you go and check it out. So that's automation in action, no AI involved. Now, the main benefits of AI and automation is comes into these three categories, really. First of all, productivity. You heard Darren say already that he saves 40% of his time. I reckon it's similar to me, but I'm using more content creation for mine. So I have built one of my favorite ones is a long form content creator for using for transcriptions, because if I've got a meeting and I've got really, really detailed technical notes, I don't want just a summary from ChatGPT. It's not good enough. So I've created my own, and that I use a lot. I've used it to write my book, which is the latest book is on the C10, which I'm going to talk to you a bit. But you can generally use it for lots of stuff. And Darren's going to talk a lot about those ones today. You can also use it for a lot of marketing activities, which will also help you get additional profit. So this can be used for improving your marketing, your automation of your SEO, your social, etc. So we're seeing that internally our team are using this all the time. And a lot of the tools that we're building, we're expecting to then roll out into clients over the next 12 months or so. And it's not that we're saying that it's getting rid of humans. It's definitely a partnership. And in a lot of cases, AI we use as an assistant. And even if we're creating content, we're always going to be editing and proofreading it, because it's not always going to, you've got to have the idea to start with. I call it an AI sandwich. I should have probably put a slide with that in, actually. So you've got sort of, and I think I nicked it from Neil, who's on the call today. So you've got AI in the middle and you've got a human either side, putting the inputs in, having the ideas, creating a great prompt, and then doing the editing and tweaking the output at the end. And then we've got customer experience, and we're going to give you an example of a voice agent in a little while, which I think is going to be, a really good example of how AI has just evolved so quickly. But if we can improve customer relationships, engagement, and give them a better experience, then they're going to like what you're doing. So over to Darren. I didn't swear.
Yeah, thank you. So what are autonomous agents? So I like to think of them as sort of digital workers on steroids. So Anne mentioned about automations previously, and automations typically in the past used to work on the basis of a sort of if then do that type of thing, and it was sort of almost hard coded in that the automation would take one piece of information, maybe through API, and then whiz that across to another tool and then do that, and then an output would be performed.
Do you want to just explain what an API is? Because I mentioned it and didn't explain it as well. So
yeah, and this is quite interesting actually, because my understanding of APIs has only grown in the last year, and with a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about today, it's quite interesting because Anne talks a bit about coding, and she's mentioned APIs and a couple of other things. And my background, although I can be a bit of a geek with some of this stuff and I like to interrogate and find answers to things, my background is not typically what you would call technical, but I'm still able to get a large portion of the development side done by just using AI. So people call it lots of different things. Vibe coding is one of the things that people are talking about at the moment. But there are tools now, and GPT is perfectly fine. But if you want to build things, and I'll show you some examples later of some of the stuff I've built with basically zero knowledge of HTML or coding or Google Scripts or any of this stuff, Claude can be a lot better for doing code-based generation because its model has just been trained on more code stuff. But basically APIs allow us, well, we've got the front end of the website that we all interact with every day. It could be any tool that we use. The APIs basically are the back end version of that. So it allows us to hook into a website or a platform or a tool and draw information to utilize without necessarily having to go into the front end and copy paste and do all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, in this example, you've got Google Sheets at the beginning. So we've accessed Google Sheets via an API. And then you've got one of these if-then statements, which is sort of called a router or a switchboard. And then depending on what answer it is, it either goes in one way or the other, doesn't it? So, and then that happens or that happens. But you've got the brain here. You've got ChatGPT here, which is going to tell you what to do. Is there a brain on the other one as well? So this one, I think, is just more getting the information that you've already created at this stage.
No, and this is a good example of an agent flow. This is quite a simple one, actually. It does show where the API hits, and then where when then augmenting that API information or that flow with the value of GPT or AI models as well, to actually not just if this, then do that, but if this, then think about it and create context and then make a decision based on that data to then do this or that or other outcomes. So what we're trying to do is not just take an automation flow, but then take that automation flow and then get an agent, as we call it, to then think about what the next step is. So we're actually creating little mini workers that can actually think about what it's doing before it then goes ahead and does it. And that's where the old Zapier back in the day, which is still a very powerful tool, and we still use that all the time, in its traditional format, is now exponentially more useful by tying in AI to those automation flows.
And in this one, what happens is you've got a spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, and you put in some topics that you want to create a social post for. And then if you put, write me a post, it goes off in this route and writes the post. And then once you've written it, and then you say, please post it, it goes off in this route, and then it will post it to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then it will tell you it's done it. So we're not going to do any demos today because we've got too much to cover. But what we will do is we will, if you're interested, if you put 3-hour workshop, please, in the form when we bring it up at the end, we will run a longer workshop where we'll actually show you some of this, because we will use that as a sort of a sales hook to our 10-day course where you'll actually learn how to build all this. Did you just want to mention what we mean by triggers, functional nodes, and connectors then, Darren?
So triggers are waiting for, they're usually the start of an automation flow. They wait for information to come in. That can be through API or via a webhook, and they essentially wait for something to happen. Now, triggers don't have to wait for an action before, for example, this flow starts. In this case, someone's added something to a Google Sheet that acts as a trigger, and then that's when that flow starts, and it goes off, and then it starts that process. In this case, it would be, if this is social posting, someone would go onto their Google Sheets, type in, I want to do a social post about AI in updates in May, and then it would start that flow and do it. There are loads of different ones. So in automations, we can have manual triggers. So we only set it live when we want to set it live. We can have it hooked into a time-based thing. So it just happens every week, every month, every minute. It's very interesting when we're talking about this stuff, just to mention that there are API costs and there are other costs that are incorporated into any flow. And so we have to be mindful of optimizing workflows as well. And that's where you start to, my journey was, I started by building stuff, and then you start to incur cost, and you start to then optimize flows based on cost. Because if you had a time-based trigger that every minute of the day was scanning your emails and then going through ChatGPT to organize those emails and then send you a prompt, a report back so you can answer the most important ones, just as an example, you're basically pinging ChatGPT every minute of the day, and those API costs can quickly escalate. So
yeah, and I mean that's where you might go for a cheaper model, wouldn't you? Yes. Functional nodes and connectors then. So I guess these are the nodes, aren't they, Darren?
They're the nodes. So Make, Zapier, NAN, all of these automation tools will work on the basis of, and Mind Studio, which we'll talk about, work on the basis of nodes or modules, or they've got different functionalities, but essentially it's different names, but essentially they are blocks which we can connect together to do a certain thing. So once one thing happens, another thing starts, and we create those as nodes. So in this example, we've got ChatGPT as a node, these two top ones here that Anne's hovering over. And then we've got Google Sheets as a node, Facebook as a node. Depending on the tool that you use, there will be nodes built in, which are pre-coded and built, so you can just drag and drop, and they'll just, with a bit of connection, they'll just work. Other times, we may need to get a bit more fancy with custom code to, for example, drag from an API or get a piece of information or transform information into something else. So those would be, and you can see the example below of the HTTP node, which essentially pulls information from a web address. So that's a different type. There's hundreds of different nodes available.
Yeah, and I think the ease of use, I mean, I've been using Make and I don't like it very much. I got really stuck with stupid things with JSON and connecting teams and stuff, which seem to be much easier. So it depends what platform that you're using. Some are easier to use and others. Relevance, I think, is really easy to use. Okay, so this was one of your slides as well, Darren, about how they work, and just a summary, or maybe you've probably mentioned most of that, haven't you?
I have mentioned most of this, yeah. So AI agents, it's difficult sometimes, and I'm trying to figure out how to communicate this, because the value of AI agents basically can be utilized for anything. And this is something that is really key when you're bringing AI into the business, or you're trying to figure out how to use AI yourselves. It's important not to start with the solution, which is, we've got this amazing technology, let's retroactively apply it to the things that we do. We need to start with a problem. And then once we've got those problems, and the problem could be anything, there's errors being made in this process, or we need this thing that I do is incredibly boring and it takes a lot of time, but I have to do it because it then leads on to other things. Once we start to identify those aspects, we can then start to find solutions and build custom agents that can then solve that problem. But going in with the solution is very difficult, because you just got this amazing thing and you don't really know how to apply it.
Okay.
But I think AI agents could be used for pretty much everything. The examples here: autonomous decision making. So like we said
Don't go through all of them, we're going to run out of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
You skip
I think it's quite useful for reference for everybody, but because we've got so much to cover, we will run out of time. So let me go on to the because you're going to be explaining a lot of this in a minute.
I've got loads of examples.
So what I've done is, because it's so difficult to understand it all, we've and if you are going to choose, sort of Darren's already hinted it, you really need to know what your challenges are or your problems are. And so I've actually created something called the C10 framework, which will help you implement AI and automation. So first of all, I'll just run through this. You don't have to, I won't read it out, but normally what will happen is you would probably do some sort of research. You do a bit of an audit, you identify the opportunities, you define a project and get a budget, and then implement some solutions and then continuously improve it. But it's not very structured. It doesn't really help you. And I wanted a way of trying to put this onto, when, I don't know whether you remember, when we did marketing, we learned about the 4 Ps of marketing, and it made everybody, have something it was a structure. So that's what I've created. And the other thing I think is really important is that not all problems need an AI solution. We've completely automated the process of bringing our Facebook leads into our training, the academy, and that's completely automated. All the application process, the WhatsApp messaging, the screening, the questions and everything, the verification or the qualification process, all automated, email send out. It hasn't got any AI. So you don't always have to have AI for everything. So this is the framework. So first of all, you start with the challenges, which is exactly what Darren said. And then you've got a whole load of things that you can potentially implement across your business. And I've divided them up into company, customers, communications, creation, which is text and images, the channels, which is the marketing channels, the connection of all your systems together, and then the control, which is things like the data and the reporting, the analytics. And then underpinning that is the costs and the compliance, because of course you have to do it ethically. You have to comply with GDPR. And there's a lot of new AI regulations coming through as well. So we are going to show you examples of the whole of the middle. But we're not going to show all of them today, because otherwise we'd be here all day. So first of all, we're going to look at challenges, which is the bit that Darren was just talking about. So first of all, you need to do some form of discovery audit, and we are doing that for clients, and we also offer it. We offer it to other customers as a paid service. We do have some to give away today, but you do have to have a certain size budget. So you will be able to apply to have an audit, a discovery audit, if you know that you want to invest at least 10K in AI building of agents. But there's some internal things that you need to consider. Have you got the leadership and strategy? Do you know exactly what you want to do as a business and where you're going? What skills and training do you need? What levels of your team is at the moment? Do they need relevant courses? Change management, how do you drive that change? Because turkeys don't vote for Christmas. And one of the problems with a lot of this, and copywriters are particularly bad at this, they don't want to use these tools because it's their craft and they can do a better job. But I think once they learn to prompt properly and realize that it can help them do their job, then they get an epiphany, and actually then they use them as, in the same way that you would use Word. Word is a tool too, and AI is no different. And then your data and tech stack, because this is something that Darren does go on about quite a lot for the right reasons, because if your data is not in the right place, you're not storing correctly. So that is definitely something that is really important, particularly if you're going to use that as your RAG or your knowledge base in order to make your AI agents work. And then you've got to identify the opportunities and solutions and where to invest in an AI project. So this is summarized here as a series of stages. And the most important step, and this is something that we will be doing with a lot more, and we're even doing this internally, is identify what you do, where you spend most of your time, what are the repetitive, time-consuming or data-heavy, expensive tasks that could be automated. Brainstorm some ideas. Where could AI help you? Obviously, if you have an idea of what's out there and what AI can do, that's going to make this process really easy, because you've seen what the art of the possible is, and then come up with a blueprint for that AI adoption process. Now, what I've done in this is, I'm not going to go through this. This is for reference later on. But what we've done is, instead of just listing a whole load of different things that you can do with AI for marketing, is we've grouped them together into the C2 to C8. And today we're going to be talking about C2, C4, and C5, but we're going to do them in reverse order. So we're going to do creation first because it's the easiest and it will apply to most of you. Then I'm going to show you these really exciting stuff that we're doing with voice agents, but that's expensive. If you're creating a voice agent, you're talking about 5 to 10K investment, but it can save you a whole member of staff. In fact, it can save you more of that if they're doing all your customer service. And then Darren's going to do a lot, because he's done a lot more agents than me. He's going to talk about some of the internal stuff that he's doing. So let's crack on. So first of all, examples of AI agents in action. So we've got the creation. So this was quite ironic, because this photograph was taken last year. And then back in January, I learned on my AI course that I'm doing out of India, a 6-month course about klingai.com. And this is what we call try-on apps. And this was addressed from Marks and Spencer's. And what I was trying to do was, I wanted the concept of merging 2 images together, because a lot of them just involve, you provide a product image and then it just makes something up behind you. And what I thought was funny about this was it made me lose 20 kilos. So I think my LinkedIn post said something like, lose 20 kilos with Mounjaro. But ironically, during the same time, I actually have lost 20 kilos because I have been using Mounjaro, which is one of the weight loss jabs, because I had a bit of a health scare. And actually, I probably look not quite as skinny as this, but somewhere halfway in between the two. So that was what was funny about that. But you can see this, you can imagine this on an e-commerce site quite easily. This is, again, a product placement app that I built using something called Comfy AI, which is really complicated. And this was the concept of, this isn't live at the moment, but if any of you are interested in this, I can make it live again. But basically, we took Charles Bentley, who we've done a lot of our work with, some of their product images on a white background, not a transparent background. And then we AI generated the background using the prompt. However, what we really want to do with them is have a standard image, and we then have all their garden furniture with a standard image, which is much more like this one. But you can see the sort of evolution where this one, if you just change the prompt, you get a completely different garden. I've even done garden furniture on the beach and garden furniture on Mars, just to illustrate that it can produce exactly the same image at the background. And then you face swap, it's called. You basically reimpose these images on top to make sure it matches and it looks exactly like the original. Then you've got some of the custom GPT. So this is an example of a custom GPT, which please scan. You're very welcome to use. This is my mega virtual CMO, which does everything. I've got a whole series of mini ones which do particular tasks, but you can literally go in and use it to create your marketing plan, your personas, your go-to-market, your content proposition, your hooks, pretty much anything to do with marketing, the virtual CMO, and it's using a lot of our guidance behind the scenes. Excuse me. Now, this is something that Darren mentioned and I've mentioned already, which is my long form content creator, which I think is much, much better than ChatGPT, Claude, etc. I had already produced this as a custom GPT, but this is way, way better. And the reason it's better, and we built this in Mind Studio, and we're Mind Studio partner, is you can see you've got lots of options. You have to put in things like the type of content, who the target audience is, if you've got a draft content already, your brand guidelines, the length of the words, and how you want the style of it. And then I've prompted particularly to create long content like blogs, articles. I've created the 10 chapters of my book using this, which are, I've got 7 of them uploaded at the moment, which I just need to finish the other 3, and then you guys can get access to that. But it's brilliant for really detailed notes. And we are going to give you a free account. You can only have access to this for a month. Then there'll be a small charge. We're talking about sort of tens of pounds just to cover the API costs. But go and add this into your form at the end, and we'll give you access to this. And if you like it and you use it all the time, we'll ask you to pay, but you'll get a month's free access, and you'll get access, and we'll be adding more of them into here. So this is our Mind Studio demo account, and we will give you access. We just need your email addresses and the fact that you're happy for us to share it. Okay, so now let's go on to communication. So this is an example of a chatbot, and this is one that I built for the Annika site. It's not live at the moment because I need to make a few amends to it, but most of you will be familiar with these. There is AI driving this, but it's also got the ability to ask a question and also use these 3 links. It's a bit like the WhatsApp message you've got, in the fact that you can choose an answer, but you can type whatever you like, and it's interrogating our website. So I will put a couple of these live later to show you, but I want to show you how that can evolve into a voice agent. So I'm hoping you're going to be able to hear this. Now, I've just realized I didn't share my screen with the voice activated. So let me just do that. Otherwise it won't work. So I need to stop sharing my screen and share again. Sorry about this. You have to have it in a specific way if you want to share the sound. I forgot to tick the box. Is it okay, Darren? Is it showing? Is that all right?
I can see the screen, yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is the voice assistant that we built. This is an example of the workflows using Make. We're actually going to be building this in N8N. And I want you to listen to this conversation. This is with Rachel, who's pretending she's got a shoe shop. And she wants to book an appointment with a guy called Matt at Future Flow, who we're working with on the first project.
AI can definitely help streamline things like customer service, managing appointments, or even boosting sales. What's the name of your shoe shop?
Rachel's Shoes.
Got it, Rachel Shoes. Love the name. How big is your team over there?
Just me.
Ah, a one-person powerhouse. That's impressive. How did you hear about Future Flow?
My manager mentioned it.
Got it. Your manager pointed you our way. Nice. Are you the one making decisions for Rachel Shoes?
Yes.
Or would your manager be involved too?
No, I run the business.
Got it. You're the decision maker. Perfect. Would you like me to help set up a meeting with our founder, Matt, to explore how AI can work for Rachel Shoes?
Yes, please.
Great. Let's get that sorted. Could you share your full name, phone number, and email so I can book the appointment for you?
Yep, it's Rachel Cryan.
Thanks, Rachel. Could you spell your last name for me just to make sure I've got it right?
Yeah, sure. It's Cryan.
Perfect, Rachel Cryan. Got it. Now, could you share your phone number?
07500 326 640.
Thanks. Just to confirm, that's 07500 326 640, right?
Yes.
Perfect. And lastly, could you share your email address?
Yep, so it's my last name, Cryan, Cryan, .rachel@gmail.com.
Got it. Just to confirm, that's cryan.r@gmail.com, right?
Can you spell that out?
Of course. That's cryan.rachel@gmail.com. Did
Yes.
I get that right?
Yes.
Perfect. What time zone are you in, Rachel?
British.
Great. British time zone it is. Do you have a specific date and time in mind for the appointment?
Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, please.
Okay, let me check that for you. It looks like tomorrow at 3 p.m. isn't available, but I can offer you the following day, April 2nd, at 3 p.m. Would that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great. Let me book you in for April 2nd at 3 p.m. One moment while I confirm that for you. You're all set, Rachel. I booked your appointment for April 2nd at 3 p.m. Matt will connect with you then. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No, that's it. Thanks.
So you heard going off in the background a WhatsApp message with the confirmation. She would have got an email as well. So you can imagine that conversation. I mean, I don't know about you guys. That sounded really natural to me. And it was very, very interactive. And that's happening literally in microseconds. So what it can do is if you have a voice agent or a chat agent, it can handle all your inbound calls. In the UK, you can do outbound calls as well. For example, abandoned carts, or if somebody's made a request and you haven't been able to pick up the phone. But the thing is, it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it can massively improve customer service. Now, we're in the process of building a voice agent with Charles Bentley, who are up in Loughborough. And I just want to explain how it works, and then we'll get on to the section with Darren. I also want to warn you that we are going to overrun. So if you've got anything planned at 10, I suggest you ask them if they, just warn them that you're going to be a little bit late, because we've got some amazing stuff still to share with you. So first of all, you've got Rachel at one side and you've got Lucas on the other who's responding. So how the hell are they having that conversation? Well, what's basically happening is it's using exactly the same technology as before, but there's a hook that joins them together. And this is happening literally microseconds. And the technology that we're using is called Retail. And basically it uses a speech to text LLM and then a text to speech LLM. So as Rachel asks a question, that's been converted into text. The LLM is processing it, and notice it's got that knowledge base, it's been trained, and then it generates a text answer, and then that's converted into speech. So it's going backwards and forwards in literally microseconds. And in fact, in some cases, I thought Rachel sounded like there was more pauses in Rachel than there was with Lucas. So that's incredible. Now, if you look at this for e-commerce, what they're saying in the chat about it, Darren, did they think it was really realistic?
Stunned silence so far.
I'm really interested in your feedback. So for Charles Bentley, so first of all, the customers can choose how to answer the question, because they can either choose a voice chat, a voice agent, or a chat bot. They then ask the questions. The AI's brain is working in the background, and then it's using the client's knowledge in this RAG with live API feeds into the product database. If you can imagine what's going on there. So first of all that data, it's things like the courier in order to find out where the order is, the CRM system to find out whether they've had a call before, live stock levels, the SQL database to find out whether there is similar stock, or what colors, or what the code is, FAQs, any notes from the archive. So this is all the information that has to be trained, the LM has to be trained on in order to answer the questions. So what happens is the customer decides whether it's going to come in as a voice assistant or an AI chatbot. Normally it's coming through the website as well. And then at any time, if it wants, it can either be directed to the human assistant, or it can be directed to the e-commerce website, particularly with the chatbot, because you can put a link in as well. Now, these guys are only going to answer certain types of questions. So they're going to answer things like, so the voice agent and the chat agent are going to answer things like product selection, recommendations, stock availability, and order tracking. Whereas the human is going to process any orders, escalate complaints, trading queries, any others, and that's obviously can be a whole load of things. But that is how this whole voice agent will work. And I'm hoping that we'll have a prototype to show you guys in around June time, when the first model is the first version, and it's going to be called Charlie for Charles Bentley. So I'm really excited about this. So over to you, Darren.
Brill, there are some comments, some very interesting comments actually about that voice agent. You can pick different accents depending on regional or where you're from. There is a comment which maybe we'll discuss a bit more at the end, and this is around the risk associated with having a bot either accessing things like customer data or routing through various different APIs, and how that could potentially be even abused by nefarious parties.
And that's why these ones won't handle anything to do with money. So exactly. That's why it's basically ring fence and all GDPR compliant. So exactly for that reason. That's why the compliance was the 10th C, exactly for that reason. You carry on. This was one of mine, but you know how this one works. It's just a custom GPT, so I can skip this. But this is another one that you might want to scan. So this is a recruitment assistant which does job descriptions and ads and things like that. So definitely worth having a play with. It's slightly trained on Annika stuff, but it'll give you an idea of how it works. And if you want one for your own organization, we can build that for you.
Just on that voice agent, I will say one more thing. Emma says it's a game changer for small business, but may not have the budget for it. It's relatively cost effective, but there are a lot of businesses that are adopting this stuff now. Angie, our co-director, she booked a table at Beefeater when we were in Liverpool the other day for a show, and they were using this type of agent for their booking system. So it is starting to come out now, and I think as people become more aware of these things starting to get out there and they see the benefit of them, they'll start to feel more comfortable using them. But I think it's important to explain on this is not trying to pretend to be a human. And I think once people start to get more used to the fact that this is just an advanced version of that, press 1 for this, press 2 for that, I think it'll become more prevalent. So yeah,
do you like my graphic? This was ChatGPT.
Yeah. So this is custom GPTs. So I have now somewhere in the realms of 60 custom GPTs on my license, which I use for a variety of different things.
And then if you add all the other ones, we've got a big database of them. I've got about 20. So I think between us, we've built about 90 altogether, because James has got a load as well, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And so Holly as well. Yeah,
I use them for various different aspects of my job. I've got some examples here that I'll quickly whiz through these. So the tender bot is useful. We do a lot of tenders and applications, and the same questions often keep coming up. And so what we've done is trained a GPT model on all of our previous answers to tenders. a bank of information based on the business and information, like, for example, our health and safety process, business continuation, all of the stuff that usually gets asked in a tender. We have that a model trained around all of that. So essentially, when someone needs to answer a question related to the tender process, there's a bot that they can paste that question in, and they'll get a response trained on all of that information, and then we can go through and just customize that response afterwards. It just saves a huge amount of time when producing tender applications. The praise summarizer I'm not going to go through today. The personal response bot is an interesting one. So I've got a bot which I've trained over the past year probably to respond like me. We know when we're asking GPT to produce content for us, often it comes back quite robotic, and it has lots of rockets emojis that it loves to put in for some reason. So I wanted to create a model that would respond like me. So I've uploaded a lot of my content to this bot. I've given it a lot of prompts around UK terminology. I've actually asked it to dumb down sometimes some of the grammar, because no one writes in perfect grammar, and when everything's perfect, it's a bit suspicious. Is that bot generated content? So those type of prompts just allow me to then quickly generate responses if I need a response generated in my tone and style, and then I can just speed up the process of, if there's any emails that I just need a quick response to, I can get it to produce that. Staff handbook is go back. A good one for businesses. We have a staff handbook which has 200 pages of all this information around maternity and sickness and all the various things that usually are in a staff handbook. So we created a handbook bot where essentially individuals can converse with our staff handbook, ask questions, do I need a sick note if I've only been sick for 2 days, those types of things, and get a response that is trained on our handbook as a model, so that it can just quickly answer those questions for our team members. And they're just some examples of loads of different things that I've built through custom GPTs. If you go to the next slide, it's not just custom GPTs that exist now, there's Claude as well. And in many cases, Claude is often better at producing responses for certain things. I really just flip between the two and find out what one thing is good at versus the other thing. This is our kickoff notes generator. So
go to
we
the
had
next page.
keep it on here for a second. So we had, what we usually do with our sales process is we have an introductory call. We then have a investigation call where we find out more information about the client and the budgets and what they want to achieve. Then we have an internal call with our team. Then we produce a pitch deck probably, and then we present that pitch deck, and all of these transcripts are saved centrally in a location, and then we'll produce a order confirmation or a contract off the back of that. Then what we do is we hand that all over to our client account manager, Rajal, who then has to collate all that information and then present that to the internal team and to the external team. And she had a format and a way in which she wanted to produce that result. And that will take a couple of hours, and there's always a risk that maybe something very small that the sales manager might have mentioned to the client that will be in the transcript but might be overlooked subsequently. What we do now is we've got basically a custom GPT, but it sits in Claude, able to be trained to take all of those transcripts, any PDF documents, any other format of documents that we might have, and then produce out of this, it's called projects in Claude, out of this project, a series of documents based on a template that Rajal wants it to look like. And if you go to the next slide, so that we've got all that information pre-filled in, so that then all she needs to do is drag and drop all those files, put them in the project, get the output, and then she can go to the meeting, and it just saves a couple of hours of just doing that work. This model is trained on the format of the response and what we want it to look like, but it's also trained on other things. For example, all of our team members are in this with their job title and what they're usually responsible for. So if, for example, somewhere in the transcript someone said, we'll set up analytics for you, and Darren's going to do the analytics. Then it will find that, it will see my name, it will go and see what job I do, and it will pre-populate that in the contracted services, and then it'll put under that what I'm going to do. So it intelligently thinks about all of that different information and then just piles it into one document so everyone can go through that document. So I believe that saved a few hours of time just scanning through all the recordings and all the transcripts. Wow, we are going to run over. This is a personal assistant. So I advocate quite often the necessity for everyone now to become AI literate, and I would put in that automation literate as well, because some of these tools can be applied to business and business process. Others that I build are specific and personal to me and help improve my day, speed things up, but might not necessarily be relevant to others. But because I have the ability to be able to build these systems, and they're quite easy to build once you've got a bit of knowledge, I can actually augment and speed up my day just by saying, oh, I do that, but I could do that so much faster if I had X tool. And then I'll go and build that tool, and then I've got it. So this is an example of a personal assistant. My goal here was to, if I'm stuck in traffic, I'm in the car and I'm thinking about work, and suddenly I need to do something and I can't access my laptop, obviously, or my phone because I'm driving, how can I work when I'm not able to get to those devices? So this is a Slack tool, and I use a different tool every time just so I can learn how the APIs and backend works. But this is a Slack tool. So I can either type or message Slack, or I can talk to Slack through the voice note feature. What this automation does, it understands using AI what I'm talking about, who I'm referencing, if I'm referencing someone, the platform that I want to utilize. It then transforms that information into something that then moves on to the next stage of the automation. It's like a traffic light system, that content router. And then it figures out, Darren's talking about emailing Anne. He wants to talk about the AI presentation. He's going to use Gmail. And then it goes through the route for Gmail. It then goes to another AI bot that then constructs that email, passes it back to Gmail into my drafts, and then it's ready for me to go. Or if I want to do a to-do list item, it knows I'm talking about to-do lists, and it adds that to-do list item. In terms of how that looks in N8N, if you go to the next slide, this is the example. It's a bit more complex than this now, but of like the different nodes that we talked about and how that information flows through those nodes. And you can see the OpenAI logo, the third node in, as an example of, you can see where it's punctuated throughout the flow with all the OpenAI models. So one agent is training another agent that then produces the result that I want. I'm not going to go through this one today for time base, but
notice how what we've got in each case is a question or a problem. Then you've got an overview, overall arch view of what you want to do, and then you've actually got the bloody workflows.
Yeah, so this one was an interesting problem, because the API existed in, for example, Big Marker, but different APIs can do different things for you and have different data sets. And so we wanted to combine that data to create an encrypted database that then can be pinged for certain questions like what we had earlier. So so that's what we did with that one, and it just created that database in an automated way by thinking about the data and populating the fields, and then we were able to produce a report out the back of it. So it's pooling data together from a variety of different sources.
Sorry, I didn't mean to click it then, but
that's all right. We won't do this. This is just my a Slack bot. I'm using Telegram in this case to ask questions about my inbox. So rather than go through my inbox, if you've ever sent me an email and waited for a response and not got one, I'm terrible with emails. I live on Teams, and I'm always trying to find ways of improving Gmail. This example is an API into Gmail, so I can ask Telegram questions. Is there anything I need to be aware of? Or that email looks interesting, I get more information about that. It'll go back, it'll get that, it will elaborate on it. I can then send responses through Telegram and it'll post them as drafts in Gmail. That's how that looks. So we won't go through that now. Data analyst is something I'm working on, where essentially we can take large form data from a variety of different sources, post it into an Airtable or Google Sheets encrypted database, and then have a conversation with data so that we can then uncover new insights. So it might be, for example, what products sold the most last month, or we've got this year's catalog through of products we can buy in, and I want to check what we sold last year against the catalog to find out what products we should be buying in. Those types of questions, anything around low stock warnings, these types of things, e-commerce type stuff, is a model that we're building out. And it's basically a way of having a conversation with your data, which I find quite interesting. So that's something that we're building at the moment. The next slide will show you kind of how that looks, but we won't go through the detail of that now. And the last one, and I just wanted to do this for a second, is about no code. So this goes back to, I've got zero experience with HTML and coding. I didn't even know Google Scripts really had the power that it had until about 4 months ago. But I think right now, the SaaS industry, especially anything to do with software that provides reports for businesses, should be concerned, because with my limited knowledge and incorporating Claude, for example, to write code for me, I'm actually able to not just bring data in an intelligent way and transform it and clean it, but then produce data visualizations, reporting apps. We can now build entire websites with a zero or low code knowledge.
Yeah, Lovable or Bolt are amazing if you haven't played with them already.
Bolt, someone else mentioned a Canva one, which I'm going to look into later. But all of these ones, for example, are just built in Google Sheets as front ends for client front ends. And then what we can do is actually interact with the data through, this is built using HTML, to generate a report exactly how we want it, how we want to see it, with the data that we want, customized to us. So rather than going to a reporting platform and having to live with whatever reports they create for us, we're now building these reports from the ground up ourselves, the way that we want it. And I'm, like I say, I'm able to do this I'm just having a conversation with Claude to say, build me an HTML. I want it to include this, this, and this. It produces a version. It whizzes away on the side. And then when it's finished, I can see a visualization of that. And I say, actually, I'd like this in the color that looks like this. And I'd actually like a search function if you could include that. And I'd like time, day, week, month splitters as well, so I can drill down on the data. It goes off again. It builds that. And then once I'm ready, copy paste, and I've got my own reporting tool ready to go. And we've done that in a variety of different
yeah, the same with that app that I said I built with the product database, with the API into the Comfy UI, where you uploaded your product image, and then it generated the AI behind that. Again, is using this vibe coding, where you code it using a prompt, and then it generates a mini website or mini app for you. So it's incredible what it can do. We have overrun, so we should probably just cover some costs. Thank you, Darren. That was really interesting. And you've actually built even more than I thought you had. So first of all, AI can be used to help in costs. It can be used for things like price benchmarking and solve other pricing issues. But the main thing you need to think about is the actual cost of implementation. So first of all, you've got the cost of your staff plus any training requirements. If you want to come on our full 10-day course, it's actually on offer at 5K at the moment. We've already spent, myself and Darren have spent quite a lot of money attending a lot of other courses. So we're sort of passing on our knowledge in a cost-effective way. We are hoping that we might get it converted into a skills bootcamp, but at the moment, I'm not sure whether the local funding bodies will pay for that at the moment. But yeah, you do need to allow for the time in to train your staff and any training that they might need. Cost of audits and consultancy. We normally charge just under 5K for our AI adoption audit. But if you want then all the strategy and everything else, as I said, we have got some audits to give away today, but you've got to have a budget for the next stage, which is the cost of AI adoption. Now, a lot of these tools, like the content ones, are actually really cheap. So if you wanted a bespoke version of any of the things that Darren has produced, it's usually between £500 and £1,000. Whereas if you wanted a voice agent, you're talking £5,000. And if you want an e-commerce voice agent, you're talking 10 grand. So that gives you an idea of the costs. And then on top of that, you've got maintenance costs. So something like my virtual CMO, if you want to use it on an ongoing basis, that might be £50 a month plus any API costs that you incur. And in theory, you've got to spend a lot. You've got to do several every day to go over the £50 in API costs. So that gives you an idea of the amount of money it might cost, but then you've got to look at the amount of money it will save. If you're talking about a voice agent, it's going to be the equivalent of a salary that you would save easily, and in some cases you can scale a bit more than that. But most of the time we would expect a 20 to 40% saving on staff time. And so what we envisage going forward is a world, and Darren did a webinar on this, where you've got a manager and they've got several AI agents that they're building to do their day-to-day task, and they're just sort of almost managing a team of agents and working with other humans to coordinate activities across the whole business. And that's happening very, very fast. Okay, so we've got a few resources and promotions for you today. So first of all, if any of you would like to rescan the code, it will override what you've previously written. So you shouldn't have to fill in all of it again. But if there's anything that we've talked about that you're interested in again, here's your opportunity to rescan it. I've received about 30 or 40 forms while we've been talking, although I don't think the WhatsApp messaging is working, which is probably a good thing because I wouldn't have been able to deal with that while we were on the call today as well. But I'll get it working for next time. One of the things that I would say is this: moving your staff up the AI adoption ladder. If you do the 10-day course, it's hybrid. The first 4 days, currently we've got the first week of September planned. Then the rest of the 6 days is either 1 day a week, or you can do the whole thing in 3 weeks. So there's a couple of options. We're even offering a weekend option. But you will need to, the 4 days is 4 days solid, and you can do that online, or if you can get to Leicester, I would definitely recommend. And these are the early bird discounts. But we expect to take you to the builder level. We're not going to convert you into an engineer, but you should be able to go through all of these stages. And if you do want a detailed timetable, that's all ready to go. If any of you want to share that, we're very happy to share that with you today. I've seen that there are some people who have actually requested that today, which is great. We're giving away 5 AI adoption discovery audits, but this isn't for just doing a bit of content marketing. This is for the real detailed one. This involves a full assessment, workshops, a massive 100-point questionnaire. This is a real piece of strategy. Now, normally this will be 5K. If you're a client, you get it for free anyway. But if you were paying for this and you did a project with us, you'd get 50% refund on actually doing the work. But we are prepared to give 5 away, but there is some qualifying factors. So if you are interested in that, again, add that onto the form. And then finally, if any of you are interested, we've got our big conference on the 11th of June at the National Space Centre. It's called EPIC, E-Commerce Performance and Innovation Conference. There's still a load of really useful stuff in there. So if you're an agency, a freelancer, or you work in e-commerce, but you're interested in the other subjects that are being covered, like generative search optimization, tickets are £96, but you can apply using that code. I think that is the last one for today. Sorry for overrunning. I just want to give you time to scan that code in. I've got one more slide which I want to show you. While Darren's been building all these amazing NAN, I spent 8 weeks playing with image manipulation, and this is a hybrid between a City of Leicester landscape, which has got the Christmas, I can't remember what they call them. We used to call them a something wheel. And then you've got a picture of my cat and a motorbike, and it's all been merged into one picture using something called Comfy AI. So if you are interested in any of this stuff, these are our contact details. I'll flick back to the Epic slide. But thank you very much for all your questions. If any of the people are still around, we can answer some questions in the chat, Darren.
We can go back to the voice agent and just see if there was anything else. Let me find those.
I'll go back to the previous one as well, just in case anybody would like to rescan that. In theory, it should just override. You should see the form details from before, but
there was a question on the voice agent, well, more of a statement about asking random questions to it, which I think is something that there will be a lot of temptations for people to do. There's used to be a lot of cases of, I wouldn't call it black hat hacking, but certainly trying to get GPT to do things that it should not be allowed to do, and that area of GPT still exists. There are always going to be people that want to break a system, especially something as new as this. And with telephone systems, I assume there will be people that want to either ask random questions and see how it
and you can
it.
train it. You know, you can train it to have a sense of humor. So, you know, do you want to go on a date? And you know, it will say things like, no, I'm happily married, thank you, or something like that. But you can train it to have a sense of humor to cover some of the more obscure questions. But it's using the LLM, so it's pretty responsive. And if you can give it rules about interruption as well. So it's incredibly clever what you can do with it. Is there any more questions?
There's been a few about data and how and security, but I've tried to answer them as best you can. It's usually a balance between either using redacted information to train AI models or making sure you've got the correct license. And whatever language model you decide to utilize or any AI platform, the tendency is, because it's so friendly and conversational, you end up starting to give things more information than probably people should. So make sure you're checking with any tool that you use what their security measures are, and also that you've got the right license that protects and encrypts your data so that it isn't either trained on that model, using your data to train that model, or then spitting out information that you've given it to others in its responses. So the best way for GPT, for example, is to pay them lots of money and get a Teams license that will lock down your information. But it's always worth keeping in mind what we're giving to these models.
Brilliant. Well, on that note then, thank you very much for all your interactivity. And I think is it PR next week? I can't remember who's talking next week.
We will have to check.
Okay. Have a great bank holiday weekend. See you all later, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
You're still sharing it.
I know. I was trying to get to stop sharing, and also to cancel the webinar. Have you stopped the presentation?